What happens when one of Britain's most celebrated actors gets caught in a verbal ambush on live television? In just 26 seconds, one dismissive comment from a talk show host would shatter the illusion of a friendly morning chat and trigger a walkout that left the entire studio stunned. Judi Dench arrived at the studio that morning, expecting a routine promotional interview. She had done hundreds of these over her decades-long career. The makeup, the small talk, the carefully rehearsed anecdotes about her latest project. It was all part of the job. But what she didn't expect was that Lorraine Kelly had other plans. The show opened with its usual upbeat energy. Lorraine smiled at the camera, her enthusiasm bubbling over as she introduced her guest. We have the legendary Dame Judi Dench with us today, everyone. What a treat. The audience applauded. Judi walked onto the set, waving politely, and took her seat on the bright orange sofa. She looked comfortable, relaxed even. She had no reason to suspect what was about to unfold. Lorraine began with the expected questions. So Judi, tell us about your new film. It looks absolutely wonderful. Judi smiled and launched into her response, describing the character she played and the experience of working with the director. It was all very pleasant. The panel members, sitting off to the side, nodded along. There was Marcus, the show's entertainment correspondent, and Fiona, a lifestyle commentator who had been with the show for years. They were watching the interview with polite interest, but then Lorraine's tone shifted. It was subtle at first. A slight edge crept into her voice. Now, Judi, I have to ask you something that I think a lot of people are wondering about. She leaned forward slightly, her expression turning serious. You've been in the industry for what, 60 years now? Judi nodded, a little cautious. Yes, around that. Lorraine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Don't you think it's time to maybe step back a bit? Let some of the younger talent have the spotlight? The studio went quiet. You could almost hear the collective intake of breath from the crew. Judi blinked, clearly taken aback. I'm sorry, what? Lorraine pressed on, her voice now laced with something that sounded almost like condescension. I mean, you've had an incredible run. Absolutely incredible. But surely you must feel like you're taking opportunities away from younger actors who are just starting out. Don't you think it's a little selfish to keep going when you've already achieved everything? Judi sat up straighter, her expression hardening. Selfish? Are you seriously suggesting that I should retire because I've been successful? Lorraine shrugged, as if she hadn't just lobbed a grenade into the conversation. I'm just saying what a lot of people are thinking. You've won the awards. You've had the acclaim. Maybe it's time to let someone else have a turn. Marcus, the entertainment correspondent, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He glanced at Fiona, who looked equally shocked. Neither of them said anything. They just watched as the tension on set escalated. Judi's jaw tightened. Lorraine, I don't think you understand how the industry works. Actors don't just stop working because they've reached a certain age or level of success. We work because we love what we do. And frankly, I don't owe anyone an explanation for continuing to pursue my career. Lorraine laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. Oh, come on, Judi. Don't be so sensitive. I'm just asking the question. You have to admit, there's something a bit unfair about it. You're taking roles that could go to someone younger. Someone who hasn't had your opportunities. Judi's eyes flashed. I'm taking roles? I audition like everyone else. I work hard. And I deserve to be there just as much as anyone. Fiona finally spoke up, her voice tentative. Lorraine, maybe we should move on to something else. But Lorraine waved her off. No. This is an important conversation. We need to talk about this. She turned back to Judi. I mean, let's be honest. You're not exactly in your prime anymore, are you? Don't you think audiences want to see fresh faces? That was it. Judi stood up, her movements deliberate and controlled. She unclipped her microphone and set it down on the sofa with a quiet thud. I came here to talk about my work, not to be insulted by someone who clearly has no respect for what I do. Her voice was calm, but there was steel in it. Lorraine's smile faltered. Oh, Judi, don't be so dramatic. I didn't mean it like that. Judi looked at her with cold precision. Yes, you did, and I'm not going to sit here and listen to it. Marcus finally found his voice. Dame Judi, please. I'm sure Lorraine didn't mean to offend you. He shot a look at Lorraine, who now seemed to realize the gravity of what she had done. But Judi wasn't having it. I've been in this business longer than you've been alive, Marcus. I know an insult when I hear one. She turned to leave, but Lorraine stood up quickly, her voice rising with a hint of panic. Judi, wait. We're live. You can't just walk off. Judi paused at the edge of the set and turned back, her expression icy. Watch me. And with that, she walked off. The camera operators scrambled, unsure where to point their lenses. The audience sat in stunned silence. Lorraine stood there, her face a mixture of shock and indignation. She turned to the camera, trying to regain control. Well, that was unexpected. We'll take a quick break. As soon as the cameras cut, chaos erupted. Producers rushed onto the set, their voices a flurry of urgent whispers. Lorraine threw her hands up defensively. What? I was just asking a valid question. Fiona shook her head, her voice low but firm. That wasn't a question. Lorraine, that was an attack. Marcus nodded in agreement. You basically told her she's too old and needs to get out of the way. What did you think was going to happen? Lorraine's face flushed red. I didn't say that. I was trying to have a real conversation. Not everything has to be sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes you have to ask the tough questions. One of the producers, a woman in her 40s with glasses and a clipboard, stepped forward. Lorraine, that wasn't tough. That was rude. You insulted one of the most respected actors in the country on live television. Lorraine crossed her arms, her voice defensive. She overreacted. She's been in the business long enough to handle a little criticism. Fiona let out a disbelieving laugh. Criticism? You told her she was selfish for still working. You questioned her relevance. And that's not criticism. That's an attack on her character and her career. Marcus added, and you did it in the most condescending way possible. You basically told her she's past her expiration date. Lorraine's expression grew more stubborn. I stand by what I said. Someone had to say it. Everyone's thinking it anyway. The producer's jaw dropped. Are you serious right now? Do you have any idea what you've just done? This is going to be everywhere. You just kicked Dame Judi Dench off your show. Lorraine waved a hand dismissively. She left on her own. I didn't kick her off. Fiona stood up, her patience clearly worn thin. You might as well have physically pushed her out the door. You made it impossible for her to stay. Marcus nodded. You were hostile from the moment you brought up her age. It was like you were trying to provoke her. Lorraine rolled her eyes. Oh, please. She's a professional. She should be able to handle a bit of pushback. The producer stepped closer, her voice sharp. Pushback? You told her she should retire because she's had enough success. You implied she's hogging opportunities from younger actors. That's not pushback. That's insulting. Lorraine huffed. I was making a point. The industry does have a problem with older actors monopolizing roles. It's a legitimate issue. Fiona's voice rose. Then you bring it up as a general topic, not a personal attack on your guest. You don't ambush someone who came here to talk about their work and turn it into an interrogation about their right to exist in the industry. Marcus chimed in. You could have asked her about her thoughts on ageism in Hollywood. You could have framed it as a broader conversation. Instead, you made it about her specifically and made it sound like she's the problem. Lorraine's face was now fully flushed with anger. I'm the host of this show. I get to decide what questions I ask. If she couldn't handle it, that's her problem. The producer's voice was ice cold. No, Lorraine, it's your problem. Because this is going to blow up in your face. You just humiliated one of the most beloved figures in British entertainment. Fiona shook her head in disgust. I can't believe you're still defending this. You were out of line. Completely and utterly out of line. Marcus added quietly, "You owe her an apology." Lorraine let out a bitter laugh. An apology? For what? For being honest? For saying what everyone else is too polite to say? The producer closed her eyes, more clearly trying to keep her composure. "Lorraine, listen to me very carefully. What you just did was not honest. It was cruel. You took a cheap shot at someone who has dedicated her entire life to her craft, and you did it on live television. That's not journalism. That's not even entertainment. That's just mean-spirited." Lorraine crossed her arms tighter. "I disagree." Fiona stood up abruptly. "Well, that's your prerogative, but don't expect everyone to back you up on this. You crossed a line today, and you're going to have to deal with the fallout." She walked off the set, leaving Lorraine standing there with Marcus and the producer. Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Lorraine, I think you really need to reconsider your approach here. This isn't going to go away." Lorraine's voice was defiant. "Good. Let people talk. At least they'll be talking about the show." The producer's expression was one of disbelief. "You think this is good publicity? You think driving away a guest and insulting her is going to help ratings?" Lorraine shrugged. "Controversy gets attention. That's the business we're in." Marcus shook his head slowly. "There's a difference between controversy and cruelty. What you did today was the latter." He stood up and walked off, leaving Lorraine alone with the producer. The producer looked at her for a long moment, her expression a mixture of frustration and disappointment. "I hope you're proud of yourself." And with that, she too walked away. Lorraine stood there in the empty studio, the light still blazing overhead. The set felt suddenly very large and very quiet. She looked around at the abandoned chairs, the discarded coffee cups, in the chaos of a live show that had gone disastrously wrong. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered across her face. Doubt, maybe, or the faintest hint of regret. But then she straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked off the set as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, in the dressing room area backstage, Judi was gathering her things. A production assistant hovered nervously near the door. "Dame Judi, is there anything we can do? Can we get you anything?" Judi shook her head, her expression composed but firm. "No, thank you. I just want to leave." The assistant nodded. "I'm so sorry about what happened out there. That was completely unacceptable." Judi paused, her hand on her coat. She looked at the assistant, and for a moment, her guard dropped just slightly. "Thank you. I appreciate that." She took a breath. "I've dealt with a lot in my career. Critics, difficult directors, challenging roles. But I've never been treated with such disrespect on a talk show. It was unnecessary and unprofessional." The assistant nodded vigorously. "Everyone backstage thinks so too. We're all horrified." Judi gave a small, tired smile. "Well, it's done now. I just want to go home." She finished gathering her things and headed for the exit. As she walked down the corridor, crew members stopped what they were doing and watched her go. Some of them looked sympathetic. Others looked angry on her behalf. One of the cameramen called out, "We're with you, Dame Judi." She nodded in acknowledgement and kept walking. Back on the set, the remaining panel members were still processing what had happened. Fiona had returned, her face pale. "I can't believe she's still defending it. She actually thinks she did nothing wrong." Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. "This is going to be a disaster. An absolute disaster. Do you know how much goodwill she just burned? Dame Judi Dench is a national treasure. People love her, and Lorraine just told her she's irrelevant." Fiona sat down heavily. "I've worked with Lorraine for years. I've seen her be tough. I've seen her ask hard questions. But I've never seen her be cruel like that. It was like she had a grudge against Judi or something." Marcus nodded slowly. "It felt personal. Like she was trying to take her down a peg. I don't understand why." A makeup artist who had been listening nearby spoke up quietly. "Maybe she's jealous. Judi's been at the top for decades. She's respected. She's loved. She's still working. Maybe Lorraine resents that. Fiona considered this. Maybe, but that doesn't excuse it. If anything, it makes it worse. Using your platform to tear down someone because you're envious? That's pathetic. Marcus sighed. Whatever the reason, the damage is done. Judi walked off, and Lorraine made it very clear she doesn't think she did anything wrong. This is going to be all over the news. He pulled out his phone and scrolled for a moment. It's already starting. Social media is blowing up. People are furious. Fiona leaned over to look at his screen. What are they saying? Marcus read a few posts aloud. Here's one. Lorraine Kelly just bullied Dame Judi Dench on live TV. Absolutely disgraceful. Another one. I've lost all respect for Lorraine after watching her attack Judi Dench for still working. Or ageism at its worst. And this one, Dame Judi handled herself with grace. Lorraine looked like a petty, jealous bully. Fiona closed her eyes. This is going to get so much worse before it gets better. Marcus nodded. And Lorraine doesn't even seem to care. She thinks this is good for the show. Fiona opened her eyes and looked at him. You and I both know this isn't good for the show. This is a PR nightmare, and it's only just beginning. The producer from earlier reappeared, looking even more stressed than before. All right, listen up. We're going to address this in the next segment. Lorraine is going to make a statement. Fiona's eyebrows shot up. Is she going to apologize? The producer hesitated. She's going to clarify her position. Marcus let out a humorless laugh. So no, she's not apologizing. The producer looked uncomfortable. She feels that an apology would suggest she was wrong, and she doesn't believe she was wrong. Fiona stood up, her voice rising. Are you kidding me? She insulted a guest on live television and drove her off the set. How is that not wrong? The producer held up her hands. I'm just telling you what she said. I don't necessarily agree with it. Marcus shook his head. This is unbelievable. She's going to double down, isn't she? The producer didn't answer, which was answer enough. Fiona grabbed her bag. I can't be part of this. I'm not going to sit there and watch her justify what she did. The producer looked panicked. Fiona, please. We need the full panel. Fiona shook her head firmly. Then you should have thought about that before letting Lorraine turn this into a circus. What? I'm done. She walked off, leaving Marcus and the producer staring after her. Marcus looked torn. I should probably go too. This whole thing is a mess. The producer's voice was pleading. Marcus, if you both leave, it's going to look even worse. Marcus considered this for a moment, then sighed. Fine, I'll stay. But I'm not backing her up. If she says something else outrageous, I'm calling it out. The producer nodded gratefully. Thank you. That's all I can ask. She hurried off to coordinate the next segment, leaving Marcus alone on the set. He sat down heavily and stared at the empty space where Judi had been sitting just minutes before. The bright orange sofa looked garish now, almost mocking. He wondered how they were going to recover from this. He wondered if they even could. When the cameras came back on, Lorraine was seated at her desk, her expression serious, but not apologetic. Welcome back. As you saw before the break, Dame Judi Dench chose to leave the interview. I want to address what happened, because I think it's important that we have honest conversations, even when they were uncomfortable. Marcus sat off to the side, his face carefully neutral. Lorraine continued. I asked Judi a question about her long career and whether she ever thinks about stepping back to make room for younger talent. I believe that's a valid question. The entertainment industry has long been criticized for not giving enough opportunities to up-and-coming actors, and I think it's worth examining how established stars play a role in that dynamic. She paused, as if expecting applause for her bravery. None came. The studio audience sat in uncomfortable silence. Lorraine pressed on. Now, Judi took offense to the question. She felt that I was attacking her personally, which was not my intention. My intention was to open up a dialogue about a real issue. However, I understand that it's a sensitive topic, and perhaps I could have phrased it differently. Marcus couldn't help himself. He leaned forward slightly. Lorraine, with all due respect, it wasn't just about phrasing. You told her she was being selfish for continuing to work. You questioned whether she was past her prime. Those aren't questions about industry dynamics. Those are personal criticisms. Lorraine's smile tightened. I was trying to have a frank conversation. Not everything has to be sugar-coated. Marcus shook his head. There's a difference between being frank and being disrespectful. You crossed that line. The tension between them was palpable. Lorraine turned back to the camera. Well, I think our viewers are intelligent enough to form their own opinions about what happened. If Judi was offended, I'm sorry that she felt that way. But I stand by the question. Marcus muttered under his breath, but loud enough for the microphones to pick up. That's not an apology. Lorraine shot him a look, but didn't respond. She wrapped up the segment quickly and moved on to the next topic, but the damage was done. The atmosphere in the studio remained tense for the rest of the show. When it was finally over and the cameras stopped rolling, Lorraine stood up and walked off the set without a word to anyone. Marcus sat there for a moment, she replaying the entire debacle in his mind. A crew member approached him. That was brutal. Marcus nodded. Yeah, it really was. The crew member lowered his voice. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing calling her out. Marcus gave a tired smile. Thanks. I just hope it makes some kind of difference. But deep down, he wasn't sure it would. Lorraine had made her position clear. She believed she was right. She believed she was being brave by asking tough questions. She didn't see that what she had actually done was bully a respected colleague in front of millions of viewers. And until she could see that, nothing was going to change. In her car on the way home, Judi sat quietly, looking out the window at the passing streets. Her publicist had already called 3 times, but she hadn't answered. She just needed a moment of peace, a moment to process what had happened. She had been in the industry for over 60 years. She had faced critics, endured tough reviews, and navigated a career full of challenges. But this felt different. This felt like a personal attack disguised as journalism. She thought about all the young actors she had mentored over the years, the advice she had given, the encouragement she had offered. She thought about the roles she had turned down so that someone else could have a chance. She thought about the countless hours she had spent advocating for better opportunities for everyone in the industry, not just herself. And then she thought about Lorraine's words. Selfish, past her prime, taking opportunities away. It wasn't true. None of it was true. But that didn't make it hurt any less. She took a deep breath and finally picked up her phone. Her publicist answered on the first ring. Judi, are you all right? Judi's voice was calm, steady. I'm fine. I just need you to draft a statement for me. Her publicist was already typing. Of course. What do you want to say? Judi thought for a moment. I want to say that I came to the show in good faith, expecting a professional interview. Instead, I was met with a series of personal attacks disguised as questions. I have spent my entire career working hard, treating people with respect, and trying to lift others up. I will not apologize for continuing to do what I love, and I will not tolerate being spoken to in such a disrespectful manner. Her publicist read it back to her. That's perfect. I'll get it out within the hour. Judi nodded, even though her publicist couldn't see her. Thank you. She hung up and leaned back in her seat. She felt a strange mixture of anger and sadness. Anger at Lorraine for what she had said. Sadness that it had come to this. But underneath it all, there was also a sense of resolve. She wasn't going to let this define her. She wasn't going to let Lorraine's words diminish everything she had accomplished. Back at the studio, the fallout was already beginning. Social media was ablaze with criticism of Lorraine. Think pieces were being written. Clips of the interview were being shared and dissected. And through it all, Lorraine remained defiant. She gave interviews to other outlets, defending her questions and insisting that she had done nothing wrong. Across the building, in her dressing room, Lorraine was on the phone with her agent. Even her voice was sharp, defensive. "I don't understand why everyone's acting like I committed some kind of crime. I asked a question. That's literally my job." Her agent's voice came through the speaker, calm but firm. "Lorraine, the way you asked the question is the problem. You told a national treasure that she should step aside. That's not journalism." Lorraine paced back and forth. "So what? I'm supposed to just lob softball questions at everyone? That's boring television." Her agent sighed audibly. "There's a difference between challenging someone and insulting them. You crossed that line today." Lorraine stopped pacing. "I'm not apologizing. I meant what I said." Her agent's voice hardened. "Then prepare yourself for the consequences. This isn't going away." Meanwhile, in the studio control room, and the director and senior producer were in an emergency meeting. Graham looked exhausted. "We need damage control." Helen nodded grimly. "The network's not happy." Graham leaned forward. "Lorraine went rogue. We had the questions vetted. She went off script." Helen's eyes widened. "Those questions weren't approved?" Graham shook his head. "Not even close. She blindsided everyone." In another part of the building, Fiona had returned to collect her things. She ran into Marcus in the hallway. "You stayed?" she asked. Marcus shrugged. "I stayed for the rest of the show. Someone should try to salvage something." Fiona gave him a sympathetic look. "I don't think there's anything that can salvage this." Marcus leaned against the wall. The second segment was even worse. Lorraine doubled down, said she stood by the question. Fiona closed her eyes briefly. Of course she did, because admitting she was wrong would require self-awareness. Marcus let out a laugh. "I called her out on air, told her there was a difference between being frank and being disrespectful." Fiona's eyebrows rose. "Good for you. How did she react?" Marcus shrugged. "She didn't like it, but I wasn't going to sit there and pretend what she did was acceptable." Fiona reached out and squeezed his arm firmly. "You did the right thing. Someone needed to stand up for Judi." As Fiona left, Marcus remained in the hallway, thinking about everything that had happened. He wondered how Lorraine could remain so unmoved, how she could watch the world react with such anger and still believe she had done nothing wrong. In her car, still on the way home, Judi received the first draft of the statement from her publicist. She read it over carefully, made a few small changes, and sent it back. Her hands were steady. Her mind was clear. She had spent a lifetime dealing with challenges, and this was just one more. She would not be diminished. She would not be silenced. The statement would go out soon, and when it did, it would be another voice in the conversation. But for now, in the quiet of her car, Judi looked out the window and reminded herself of all the things Lorraine had failed to see. The years of hard work, the dedication to the craft, the respect she had earned, not demanded, and the simple truth that her value had nothing to do with her age. But the public wasn't buying it. They saw what everyone else saw, a host who had used her platform to belittle a guest, a host who had let her own insecurities or biases cloud her judgment, a host who had forgotten the most basic rule of interviewing: treat your guests with absolute respect. And as the hours turned into days, the story only grew bigger. Lorraine Kelly had kicked Dame Judi Dench off her show, not physically, but effectively, and the world was watching.